Everything to add to that he could.
Yes.
His poverty, his
Precisely.
mother, 74 very quickly.
As a product of the Midwest, Gerald Ford can probably predict how most of his decisions will play here in Peoria, but public opinion here remains important as a barometer of sentiment in mid-America. And today in Peoria, there is a general concern about what effect the events of the past 24 hours will finally have on the country. Ron Miller, ABC News, Peoria. The Nixon administration valued how policy decisions would play here in Peoria, the town that grew to represent the former president's support in the country's heartland. But Peoria's attention is directed to a new president now, and in Peoria, people gathered around television sets to watch Gerald Ford become the nation's 38th president. The editor of the Peoria Star-Journal, C.L. Dancy, thinks recent events will have a sobering effect on the nation.
Well, I think that we have done something here that we really don't know the effects of yet, and we didn't even care or worry about until the day came.
FFC driver, please go to the back
And
door.
and now it's here, and I believe that we're going to find out whether we have made any significant change in our system or not by ridding ourselves of a president by the method that we did. If you can call it a method, it was pretty catch as catch can.
You're running? Oh, yes, you are. Play in Peoria, 8-8, Peoria, Illinois, roll 1.
faith, asking, is there any better way or equal hope in the world?
It's good to see that in a country like we live in, that this change could be made as orderly as it can, and it goes to prove, it seems to me like no matter what the motive, it never really proves right to do the wrong thing, even though you think you might gain from it.
Well, I feel very humble for Mr. Nixon. I've always been a pro-Nixonite, you might say, and it was his speech last night was hard for everyone to accept, but I think it's sincerely what he wanted and in the best interest of the country.
We'll be on TV tonight.
What was your reaction to the president's speech?
I didn't see it.
What do you think about Mr. Nixon's resignation?
Well, I think he should have done it a long time ago. That's what I think.
Why?
Because then he would have saved the country a lot of money and let things get on. You know, let the rest of the business get on. And
Would you favor immunity for the president?
yeah.
Why
Yes.
is that?
I would hate to see a president be put in jail.
That's kind of a turnabout from the original statement, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but I think as long as he resigned, I think that's enough.
What is your name, sir?
Clarence Holmes.
What was your reaction to the president's speech?
Well, I was glad to hear it. I thought it was coming, and I think it's the best thing because it's going to save a lot of talk in the Senate and the Congress and everything and get it over and done with.
Do you think America will be able to handle the transition smoothly?
I think so, yeah.
Why?
Well, we can adapt, I think, and get through this, and the sooner we get through it, the better we're going to be.
Would you favor immunity from prosecution for the president?
No, I don't think so, no. I mean, if he's done something wrong, he should be accountable for it. Like, I do something wrong, I'm accountable for it. You, same way. All these Dean and Haldeman and all these guys are in jail. I mean, they've been up there and they've been perjuring themselves and telling lies. If he's been lying, well, let him go right along with him.
What is your name, please?
Mrs. Brandt, Levon Brandt.
What did you think of the president's resignation speech?
I thought the speech was great, but I think it was a terrible thing that this happened. I think we're going to all be sorry for this. There hasn't been anyone else that's done any worse than, in politics than he has. In fact, he's done a lot of good for the country. I'm just sort of half sick of the whole situation.
Do you feel that's an excuse for what he's done?
Pardon me?
Do you feel that's an excuse for what he's done?
Well, what's an excuse for what he's done?
He's admitted his guilt and he's resigned office.
Well, yes, but all politicians do wrong. You know that as well as I do. And he hasn't done any worse than anyone else.
Do you think the president should be granted immunity?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, I think he's done a lot of good. I really do. I just feel I don't want to say anymore. I'm just all upset about the whole thing.
My lifetime in public office to have
Which way?
I think tomorrow. I can start out.
What is your name, sir?
Bill Weiss.
What did you think of President Nixon's resignation speech?
I thought it was a very beautiful speech, very well done. And I'm sorry that it had to happen this way. But I think the American public, in general, will arise above the whole situation.
Do you think the resignation was a good thing for the country?
Well, I'm not sure about that. But there's so much confusion about the whole situation. And I think that if he had come out in the beginning and admitted that he had made a mistake, this would not have gone this far.
What is your name, sir?
Tom Attaway.
What did you think of President Nixon's resignation speech?
It's about what I expected. I think he should have stayed in and took his medicine with the rest of them, though. He should have been impeached and then stood trial like any private citizen ought to.
Then you would not favor immunity for the president?
No way. I think he's just as guilty as his cabinet members that went to prison.
Do you think Mr. Ford will make a good good president?
Probably will. I'm a Democrat, so I won't say yes or no.
Play in Peoria, 8-8, Peoria, roll number 2.
Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shape the history of this nation. Each time I have done so to discuss with you some matter that I believe affected the national interest. In all the decisions I have made in my public life, I have always tried to do what was best for the nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort. As long as there was such a base, I felt strongly that it was necessary to see the constitutional process through to its conclusion. That to do otherwise would be unfaithful to the spirit of that deliberately difficult process and a dangerously destabilizing precedent for the future. But with the disappearance of that base, I now believe that the constitutional purpose has been served, and there is no longer a need for the process to be prolonged. I would have preferred to carry through to the finish, whatever the personal agony it would have involved. And my family unanimously urged me to do so. But the interests of the nation must always come before any personal considerations. From the discussions I have had with congressional and other leaders, I have concluded that because of the Watergate matter, I might not have the support of the Congress that I would consider necessary to back the very difficult decisions and carry out the duties of this office in the way the interests of the nation will require. I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad, to continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office. As I recall the high hopes for America with which we began this second term, I feel a great sadness that I will not be here in this office working on your behalf to achieve those hopes in the next 2.5 years. But in turning over direction of the government to Vice President Ford, I know, as I told the nation when I nominated him for that office 10 months ago, that the leadership support of all of us. As we look to the future, the first essential is to begin healing the wounds of this nation, to put the bitterness and divisions of the recent past behind us, and to rediscover those shared ideals that lie at the heart of our strength and unity as a great and as a free people. By taking this action, I hope that I will have hastened the start of that process of healing which is so desperately needed in America. I regret deeply any injuries that may have been done in the course of the events that led to this decision. I would say only that if some of my judgments were wrong, and some were wrong, they were made in what I believed at the time to be those who have not felt able to give me your support. Let me say, I leave with no bitterness toward those who have opposed me. Because all of us in the final analysis have been concerned with the good of the country, however our judgments might differ. So let us all now join together for the past 5.5 years. These years have been a momentous time in the history of our nation and the world. They have been a time of achievement in which we can all be proud. Achievements that represent the shared efforts of the administration, the Congress, and the people. But the challenges ahead are equally great, and they too will require the support and the efforts of the Congress and the people working in cooperation with the new administration. We have ended America's longest war, but in the work of securing a lasting peace in the world, the goals ahead are even more far-reaching and more difficult. We must complete a structure of peace so that it will be said of this generation, our generation of Americans, by the people of all nations, not only that we ended one war, but that we prevented future wars. We have unlocked the doors that for a quarter of a century stood between the United States and the People's Republic of China. We must now ensure that the 1/4 of the world's people who live in the People's Republic of China will be and remain not our enemies, but our friends. In the Middle East, 100 million people in the Arab countries, many of whom have considered us their enemy for nearly 20 years, now look on us as their friends. We must continue to build the world. We'll live together in cooperation rather than confrontation. Around the world, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Middle East, there are millions of people who live in terrible poverty, even starvation. We must keep as our goal turning away from production for war and expanding production for peace, so that people everywhere on this earth can at last look forward in their children's time, if not prosperity without inflation. For more than a quarter of a century of public life, I have shared in the turbulent history of this era. I have fought for what I believed in. I have tried, to the best of my ability, to discharge those duties and meet those responsibilities that were entrusted to me. Sometimes I have succeeded, and sometimes I have failed. But always, I have taken heart from what Theodore Roosevelt once said about the man in the arena whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly. If he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. I pledge to you tonight, as long as I have a breath of life in my body, I shall continue in that spirit. I shall continue to work for the great causes to which I have been dedicated throughout my years as a congressman, a senator, vice president, and president. The cause of peace, not just for America, but among all.
One of President Nixon's shortest speeches, his last speech, it lasted just about 16 minutes. It was a speech with a great deal of grace. Harry, can you hear me?
I can indeed, Howard.
I thought his quotation from Theodore Roosevelt was very impressive.
I'm all in favor of it, yeah. That's part of the whole Nixon personality that he is always